My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning, everyone. It is time for our program to begin. Would you please kindly take your seats if you choose to be seated? To start our program, we're going to first hear a word of prayer from Minister Attorney Sylvia D. Reed, Chapel. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let us praise the Lord. Let's give him a hand praise first, because many of you have marched, and just let's raise your hands and relax and give God praise. Hallelujah. Bless your name. And it's my name is Attorney Sylvia D. Reed Chappelle, and it's an honor to be before you this morning. And let's bow our heads. Oh, gracious and most heavenly Father, Almighty God, in the name of Jesus, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for waking us up this morning. Thank you for starting us on our way. Thank you for the Rambee organization. Thank you for the Old North Cemetery. We thank you, oh God, for honoring the people who have gone before us, who have done so much to allow us to have the freedoms that we have today, God. Many of us have taken advantage of it, but God, we just want to say thank you. Cover us with your blood. Do a special thing for us today in this place, in our lives, God. We honor you, we glorify you, and we give you honor and praise for all things, great and small, because you have created them all. Thank you for all the ministers. Thank you for all the representatives who are here, all the speakers. Cover us, God, and bless us. And let us multiply our love one for another. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Hey, Hartford, Connecticut, I'm talking to you.
I'm Corrine Blake, resident of Asylum Hill, and if I were the mayor of Hartford, I'd make sure that everyone in the education system knew about the community in which they work, the city in which they work. Because once you know about it, you begin to value the city and you begin to serve in that passion. I'm really very passionate about education. I'm an early childhood educator, and so I wouldn't be doing any playing around with programming and getting help to the people who work in these areas. It has to be focused, well formatted, and supported. So that's like my biggest thing, because as my mother taught us many, many years ago in Jamaica, once you have education, that's one thing no man can take away from you. You may lose your money, you may lose your property, but once you are well educated, no one can take that from you. And if you have that, then we can build a viable city. Thank you.
Stop. Take a look around.
Greetings, everyone.
Greetings.
So you can all hear me?
Yes.
Beautiful. Our ancestors are those who came to earth long before us and never walked the earth with us in the flesh, but are always with us in the spirit. So it is only fitting that we should take time and pour libation in honor of our ancestors, because it's due to their love, devotion, and nurturing, that we walk the earth and enjoy all the comforts and conveniences and necessities made available to us. I'm going to ask you to help me out. When you hear me say, we offer thanks and praises, would you please respond by saying, Ashe? Here's one. We offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
That's very nice, but remember now, we are celebrating our ancestors, not mourning them. So let's hear a little bit more oomph with that Ashe, okay? For this, we offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
Ah, beautiful. Ancestors find that pleasing. The libation statement says this. We are grateful that our ancient ancestors left us a legacy of love, truth, and peace for self-survival. For this, we offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
Libation Ashe. We are grateful that our ancestors taught us to honor our Creator, our Earth Mother, our teachers of peace, and all our relations in every dimension of self-awareness. For this, we offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
Libation Ashe. We are grateful that we enter our Earth walk with all questions and answers within as a mission in life. For this, we joyfully offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
Libation Ashe. We are grateful that we can explore and discover that our essential being is deep within our nature. For this, we joyfully offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
Libation Ashe. It is my sincere hope that the Almighty Creator will always bless you, that the ancestors will always guide you, and that our paths will cross again very soon and very often during our Earth walk. For this, we joyfully offer thanks and praises.
Ashe.
Libation Ashe. Thank you all very much. Can we just have an acknowledgement for my lovely sister Joanne here, who offered such lovely drumming and such a beautiful accompaniment. Please. Thank you.
Next, let's hear from Nzinga's daughters with the singing of the Black National Anthem, the first verse. All rise.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on
Thank you, sisters. Please be seated. Please be seated.
Parade, rest.
No. Allow me to dispense with any preconceived notion of what I wanted to say today, with the permission of the primary organizer of today's event, Mike Fothergill. I've been given a little time to say a few words as the master of ceremonies. Now, I know no one came here to hear me speak, but I have a few things I'd like to share nonetheless. These grounds and the people who rest here are not new to me or any of us. For me, it's especially important. And to illustrate why, I've got to go back a few years, about 63 to be exact, actually. When my grandmother, Pearl Wood Smith, who lived on Garden Street, would tell me and my cousins about the olden days in the city of Hartford. And we talked about everything, including horse-drawn fire trucks, which we simply didn't believe. But she also mentioned the colored soldiers that were in Old North Cemetery. And during that time period, we would confuse Spring Grove with Old North, which is common. But it was during that time period that I came to realize the importance, the relevance of history. And also how vitally important it is that we remember the sacrifices that were made so that we could have the opportunity to live the lives that we have. If you take a look at the south lawn of the state capitol, near the entrance is something that bears a resemblance of a very large cannon called the Petersburg Express. The Petersburg Express was used during the Battle of Petersburg, which included the Battle of the Crater. Some of us may be aware or familiar with the Battle of the Crater and some not, but look it up and you'll come to realize just how much they sacrificed, because the colored Civil War soldiers of the 29th Regiment were present there and in many, many locations where they proved just how valuable they are to us even to this day. Perhaps more in my closing remarks, but for now, to move on with the program, let us listen to Commander Louis Robinson for his remarks.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are here once again, gathered to pay honor to the first all, in the old days, colored regiment of the American Civil War. Commissioned in 1863, it was the 29th Connecticut Colored Infantry Regiment. They were all volunteers. We was allotted 1,000 volunteers, and we were not allowed to have an officer. We had to have a white officer. But during that period of volunteering, we ended up with 1,300 volunteers. So what they had to do was they had to cut that 1,300 down to 900. So the 29th consisted of 900 volunteers and a white officer. The 29th was formed when the Union was short of manpower. The Civil War had taken its toll. These black men were ready and willing to fight and willing to write that check. We all know what that check is. For those of you those of you who do not know what that check is, it's a written check that any volunteer soldier always writes. It is for anything up into his life. That check is irrevocable. We do it while we are enlisted, we do it while we're in service, we do it while we're out of the service. And the reason I say that because if you check around, you'll see a lot of hats around here. These are American Legion hats. We're still writing that check. You have the National Guard around us, 1771. They're still writing that check. I didn't want to veer off on that, but I did. Black soldiers of the 29th were fighting for their family, their family's freedom, their family's life, and their life. They were led by Colonel William B. Wooster. The 29th proved themselves in many battles, many engagements. The engagement of the siege of Pittsburgh, the Battle of Chaffin's Farm, the second Battle of Deep Bottom, the Battle of Derbytown Road, the Battle of the Fair Oaks and Derbytown Road, and the Appomattox Campaign. The most notable of these is the Siege of Pittsburgh. The 29th was the first Union regiment to walk into Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the Confederacy at the time. The first Union regiment to walk into a captured city, the capital of the Confederacy, was the 29th, which was an all-black regiment. I'm saying we had all these battles, we still had to prove ourselves. But the 29th proved that there was fight worthiness. Not only did they fight, but they also served as something that upset a whole lot of people. They served as guards for those that was captured. That didn't go too well because you got a black regiment guarding southern population. But we survived. We survived. Most of us know that during that time, it was slavery time. And most of us know that colored people were slaves. And that we fought in the Union, we fought with the Union for a reason. That reason was for us to free our family, to free us, to prove that we could fight. Now, that's a mistake, because first of all, most black men at that time were already warriors. When they were captured, they was warriors. So it was not a fact that we had to learn how to fight. It was a practice of them letting us fight our battle. And once we did that, we had no problems. The 29th, 2 years, they lost 44 soldiers and 1 officer. They lost 152 soldiers and 1 officer to disease. Now, in 2 years, I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. We lost 20 members of the people we lost are here in Old North Cemetery. They are
Command, attention! Present arms.
Sergeant William Dewey died May 19, 1901. Sergeant Daniel W. Oliver, May 19, 1901. Corporal Henry W. Edwards, March 24, 1892. Corporal George Hendricks, February 16, 1912. Corporal Sidney R. Taylor, February 11, 1898. Private William A. Williams, July 15, 1910. Sidney S. Basie. David Branch, June 27, 1896. Charles D. Perry, April 8, 1890. Henry H. Williams, February 9, 1888. Isaac A. Scott, June 15, 1919. Edward Pledge, July 9, 1875. And Justin Perkidges, October 24, 1891.
Order. Arms.
Thank you. You may be seated. Now you think the battle was over for the soldiers, but it wasn't. It was not over. The black soldier, the colored soldier, the Afro-American soldier, the Negro soldier, and as we are now the black soldier, we have participated in every war in this country. All because the 29th from Connecticut was brave enough to prove and to do their duty in seeking our freedom. The wars, French and Indian War, Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Mexican-American War, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, the Iran War, Gulf War, Afghanistan War, the Iraq War, and now the war that's going on now with Russia. I think it's Russia, but we fighting with Afghanistan, but they ain't tell nobody, but we still there. We still there. Ladies and gentlemen, the 29th, the reason we are here today. The 29th is the reason we'll be here next year. The 29th is the reason we're here. We're here because the 29th fought for one thing, the family. The family. The family. They fought for the family freedom way back then, and we still fight for the family freedom. As a matter of fact, as an organization today has a motto, one of its mottos that says, family first. And I would like to thank the members of the 29th Connecticut Infantry for introducing us to the world that we live in today. Thank you.
Next, representing the state of Connecticut, State Representative Nolan, please.
Thank you. I'm honored to stand before you today on this special occasion in which the Connecticut 29th Regiment CFE Infantry is being recognized. It is amazing to know, because I hadn't had the knowledge prior to earlier this year from a friend who shared information of our black soldiers being here laying in rest. It is an amazing thing to know that these soldiers were part of the reason why we are here today, if not the reason why many of us are here today. To know that they stood up to battle, especially in a time where they didn't recognize us to be worthy of battling, but they proved people wrong. And this is why we are here today, because of the magnificent things that they did prior to us coming. And it is an honor to present two citations, one from the General Assembly and one from the Lieutenant Governor's office. And I'll just read a small portion of what they say. The first one from the Connecticut General Assembly reads as follows, introduced by myself. Be it hereby known to all that the Connecticut House of Representatives hereby offers its sincere congratulations and honor to the Connecticut's 29th Regiment Volunteer Infantry. In recognition of their groundbreaking service on behalf of the Union during the Civil War, eager to fight against the Confederacy, these African American men, these brothers, overcame prejudice by asserting themselves as dedicated patriots. From 1864 on, the 29th Infantry fought many battles in Virginia, pushing the Confederate Army back. Importantly, they were among the first Union regiments to march through Richmond. However, their fight for equity continued beyond the war's end. And today, we are honored the unprecedented service of the Connecticut's 29th Regiment Volunteer Infantry for freedom and equality. The entire membership extends their very best wishes on this occasion. This is signed by the Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, and the Secretary of State, Stephanie Thomas. And I present this from the Connecticut General Assembly. And the next one is from Lieutenant Governor Susan Bicewicz. Official statement is, I take great pleasure in offering my sincere appreciation to the Connecticut 29th Colored Regiment CV Infantry for their service during the Civil War. The Connecticut 29th Colored Regiment CV Infantry dedicated itself to honor, bravery, sacrifice, and advancement of freedom. The 29th Regiment's service to our nation during the Civil War demonstrates immense strength as the first infantry regiment to enter Richmond. The state of Connecticut is so fortunate to honor those who served in the 29th Colored Regiment CV Infantry. May we take time on this day to honor and recognize their service and sacrifice. Signed on this day, June 2023, by the Lieutenant Governor Susan Bicewicz, who unfortunately had a different event that was going on. I explained that I would be here and would be glad to read this on her behalf. So I also present this one to you from the Lieutenant Governor Susan Bicewicz. Thank you. Something I just want to add and recognize. Black America has had an amazing participation in creating some of the hard fight obstacles that our country has gone through. And it is way overdue for the state of Connecticut to start recognizing and allowing representation at some of the events that need to be going on to be known and to be heard. And we need to, as a people, to stand up and give those reminders. Because if we don't, then it will go unrecognized.
That's right.
So anything that we know that came and happened from those who came before us, please feel free to contact us at the state capitol so we make sure that we bring recognition to any events or any times that we have not been recognized for the things that we helped fight and make this country what it is. Do not let things go unrecognized, because we have a voice in this Capitol and we will use our voice. Please remember that. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Ashe.
Next, representing the Hartford chapter of the NAACP, Mr. Corey Betts.
Come on. All right. Come on.
Wow. So I have the privilege, first off, on talking about the beginning. Then I'll go into some other stuff. The path to freedom started with the Freedom Trail before Harriet Tubman. She was the most famous Underground Railroad conductor of the Freedom Trail. The Freedom Trail came together from thousands of slaves, freed men, and dedicated abolitionists, and a network that changed routes by overseers for years. Respect to the resolute people in our past who showed their courage in the 1800s. Thank you, and thank them for their efforts and helping their fellow man to obtain their dreams and freedom as well. We would like to thank you for the brotherhood and the sisterhood filled with love and mercy. They helped our black leaders that led the founding of the NAACP and other organizations we know today. Thank you all for having me here. Today, as we gather to celebrate and honor the rich history of Hartford and the soldiers who gave their lives for us to even have this opportunity. As you all know, my name is Corey Betts, and I am president of the Greater Hartford branch of the NAACP, and it is my privilege to stand before you and reflect on the rich history of our great city. And I think it would be very important for me to share that the NAACP was founded here in October of 1917, and W.E.D. Bois was one of the founders of the NAACP who came and visited us here to making sure that we had our charter here. And he came because activism was very strong in Hartford. He said, man, I got to go to Hartford because these people, they moving, they're shaking and moving in Hartford. So he came here to making sure that we were able to get a charter. So today, as we come together in the momentous event of the 13th annual honoring ceremony and celebration for the Connecticut 29th Colored Regiment CV Infantry taking place here at the Old North Cemetery, this site holds great significance as part of the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Let me repeat that. It holds a big piece on the Freedom Trail, and it serves as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made by our ancestors in pursuit of freedom and equality. The theme of today's Juneteenth celebration is history in our neighborhood. And I think we need to really focus on, we're right here in the middle of Hartford with so much rich history. We have to remind even our kids who are coming behind us to knowing that there's a lot of rich history in this community. And it reminds us of the importance of recognizing and preserving the historical legacy here in Hartford. As we gather at this hallowed ground, we pay tribute to the brave men of the 29th who fought during the Civil War. Many of them rest here, their final resting place serving as a testament to their courage and dedication. Each of them represents a life dedicated to the fight for justice and equality. Their sacrifices are not in vain. The struggles faced by those who come before us have paved the way. Let me say that again, have paved the way for us to be right where we are today. Like the NAACP, if it wasn't for them, it would have been an organization like the NAACP, who has been at the forefront of the fight of civil rights, advocating for equal rights and challenging systemic racism, and working tirelessly to ensure justice and fairness for all. The NAACP has been a pillar of support for the African American community, providing a voice for the voiceless and fighting for the rights and dignity for every individual. But now, let's be clear, but our work is far from over. As we reflect on our history, we must also look to the future. We must continue to be vigilant in the face of persistent inequality, discrimination, and social injustice. We must work to dismantle systemic barriers and create a more inclusive and equitable society. The struggles of the past serve as a reminder that our fight for injustice is ongoing and the NAACP remains committed to this cause. I want to express my gratitude to the Friends of the Old Cemetery, American Legion, Hartford Communities That Care, The Village, and Rambee, Ebony Horsewomen, and all those other sponsors. In closing, let me remind the sacrifices of those who came before us, the soldiers who fought for freedom and the leaders who fought for justice. Let us honor their legacy by continuing the work they started. Together we can build a future where equality, opportunity, and justice are not just ideals, but a reality for all. Thank you, and let us celebrate this Juneteenth with pride and determination. And Rambee in Swahili phrase means, let us pull it together. Thank you.
If you, like myself, have studied history for literally decades, you probably consider yourself to be a historian or an historian, depending upon how you say the word history. But the truth of the matter is, pardon me, I consider myself to be just a history buff. And the reason why I say that is because I know some true historians, and we have certainly one of them in our midst right now. That person is the next person to speak. Would you please come forward, Dr. Fiona Vernal.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As Commander Robinson said, Black people have fought at every single military engagement this country has ever participated in. And yet, at the beginning of the Civil War, in the North, we went on and on in the newspapers and in public venues debating whether they should participate in the Civil War. And that is why it is not until 1863 that we have the first colored regiments. And so I'd like you to ponder that as we consider the men who enlisted in this infantry, Connecticut's first non-white military unit. Similar regiments were raised elsewhere in Pennsylvania, in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts. And so this regiment is also part of this broader history in the Northeast of Black people participating. It is important to note that this debate is also happening in the context in which Black men are being pressed into military service in the South to participate on the other side. And so let me take you to Connecticut, where in dozens of towns throughout this state, we're in Bridgeport, we're in Norwich, we're in New London, and in Hartford here, where dozens and dozens of people come out to participate in this cause. In Hartford alone, there are 456 men who come out, and this ends up being about a quarter of the total number of overall recruits. This is a really significant number if you consider that for the entire 19th century, the entire population of Hartford, the whole black population of Hartford, hovers under 2,000 people. And so for that small population, for such a significant proportion of men in Hartford to turn out speaks volumes to their dedication and their commitment. As Commander Robinson told us, they dug trenches, they guarded prisoners, they saw combat in Virginia, in Texas, and in Maryland, and over 30 are buried in Hartford's cemetery where we are today. And so we hope this monument that you saw when you drove in today is just the beginning of telling the story. And I'd like to leave you with two things. One, with what Frederick Douglass had to say when he gave the speech before their departure in Fairhaven. And he said then to these men gathered, "You are pioneers of the liberty of your race. With the United States cap on your head, the United States eagle on your belt, the United States musket on your shoulder, Not all the powers of darkness can prevent you from becoming American citizens. And not for yourselves alone are you marshaled. You are pioneers. On you depends the destiny of 4 millions of the colored race in this country. If black people rise and flourish, although he said, if you rise and flourish, we shall rise and flourish. If you win freedom and citizenship, we shall share your freedom and citizenship. And by we, he meant every single person in the United States of America. Black people have guaranteed the freedom of every single person in the United States of America, even when they were not guaranteed to benefit themselves from having to fight for that freedom. And so in closing, I'd like to remind us about the meaning of the word to commemorate. It means to make memory together. It is a collective enterprise, not an individual enterprise. It means it's a collective enterprise to remember the valor and the sacrifice of the men who fought and gave their lives, and the hundreds and hundreds of family members who supported them, the women and children and other community members who came out to support them and who suffered many privations as they waited for their family members to come back, only to find out that many of them were not going to come back alive. These men fought to bring about emancipation and to make good on the promises of freedom and equal rights, which black people are still fighting for today. And that is why it is fitting on this Juneteenth to remember the lives of these men and the descendants who are keeping their legacy alive. We hope next year that we will be able to produce yet another monument that will be available for all of us at the next ceremony. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vernell. The last members of my family to work as slaves in the United States of America were Peter Bronner, Sarah Cuff, Annie Smith, and Andrew Woods. Andrew Woods lived to be 98 years old. Since realizing that I had a cousin by the name of Andrew Woods, our next speaker has been my adopted cousin. There is no proof anywhere that he is related to me, but I call him Cousin Andrew anyway. Not just because of the likeness and names, but because of the great work he does. I'm very proud of him. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Woods.
Proud to have a black fire chief retired as a cousin of mine. Folks, I was born and raised in Bellevue Square, which is right across the way there, in 1960. And this, believe it or not, this cemetery over there used to be somewhat blank, and we used to play ball, football. Matter of fact, the older guys used to play football. I used to watch because I was not running around tombstones with the threat of injuring myself. And but, you know, one of the things about that, I raised this story to say this, is that this community has a lot of history. It has significant grounding, enriching history. And as my cousin Chief Till speaks to the not being historians, but in fact, you know, just being those that admire and have a deep appreciation for history, I too have a background in genealogy and the study of our people, specifically our family when you talk about genealogy. But more importantly, the connection between genealogy and history. And folks from Georgia, Fort Gaines, Georgia, Mr. Stringer's here, we got family from the same neighborhood down there in Fort Gaines, is that I used to go down into the town hall and comb through a lot of the old records and to discover how my family migrated or how they even existed in the South before they migrated to the North. And I was allowed to go into and look at the land records, look at the burial records, look at the birth certificates, death certificates, and was able to track back family nearly to the 1700s. What that did for me as a person was that it taught me the real importance of understanding your history and how empowering that is. And let me repeat that. History have a way of being very empowering, and it has a way of setting a person up to understand who they are. And so in spite of the challenges that we may face as we grow older and on the day-to-day challenges and stressors that we encounter, when you're grounded in history, it has a way of rebalancing you out. Several years ago, in fact, 10 years ago or so, Mr. Fothergill and a few others approached me and said, hey, listen, we got a serious issue here in this neighborhood. The cemetery was in disarray. I lead an organization here in the north end of Hartford, been doing so for 25 years. And we wanted to connect young people to their history here because it was so rich. We end up going down to the public works yard of all places, of where in these dirty, basically in these file cabinets, had all of the records of everyone that was interned in this cemetery. No one, very few people even knew that those records existed. The State Historical Society or the State Capitol, or there's an office down there that basically should have all the records of people that are interned throughout the state of Connecticut. They happen to be in this closet or in this storage room in the public works yard in the Meadows. I brought around a dozen young people down there. We combed through every single one of the records of people who are interned here. We made copies of those. We transcribed them. We did everything that we could to basically when we talk about rebirthing this information, if you will. And then we brought them here to also learn more about the people who were inside this particular cemetery, specifically the soldiers that we are here to honor today. Let me tell you what happened to those young people. They are young people who grew up in Hartford. They were only in their teens. They begin to gain a greater appreciation, not only for the neighborhood, not only for their own peers that they were interacting with, but they begin to get the same sense of purpose, the same sense of agency that, quite frankly, I had learned myself as a person who had been doing genealogy. And so I knew that instinctively, that if we got young people exposed to their history, if we got them exposed to the power that they have, then they in turn would create opportunities for themselves, more importantly, opportunities that no matter what road they went down, they would be fortified with understanding how they can gain more information to be empowered to move forward in stressful situations, just like many of us as adults. So today, Fothergill asked me to speak to the history of this neighborhood or the history of something. I'm only going to mainly speak to what people know for me to speak to, is really the connection between history, our young people, and how we have to always offer up opportunities for them to understand who they are, where they come from, and how that connects to their existence moving forward. I have to run. My staff is here as well from Hartford Communities That Care. We're all suited up. We're going to be going down to the NAACP dinner down in Coventry to support that chapter, and we're glad to be here. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Cousin Andrew. That was exceptional. He always is, really. Next, let's hear from representing the city of Hartford, Councilman Josh Mickton. Councilman Mickton.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chief. Thanks everyone who went before me. I'm really here mostly representing Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, because she couldn't be here. She's on vacation with her family. But she worked with Ms. Bridget Prince most closely to put up the Black History Trail, including the monument that hopefully you saw on the way in or you'll check out on the way out. And so I got to talk to Councilwoman Hercules a little bit about what she wanted me to say. And for her, the important thing, I think a lot like Mr. Wood was talking about, is for young people to understand what is the history of Hartford and how does it touch them, right? And I think, unfortunately, you walk around a lot of Hartford and you get a picture of history which feels very inaccessible, right? If you asked anyone if they knew at all what was our connection to the Civil War, they might point to the Colt building, right, which was supposedly supplied all the arms to the North to help the North win. We know that it also supplied some arms to the South. And we also know that Sam Colt, whatever good he might have done, I mean, there was no risk for him. He was rich and he was white and he ran a factory. And I think a lot of the heroes that our young people see when they look around, if they look, for example, those little statues on the Capitol, it's a lot of old white folks from comfortable families. And whatever good they did, the risk they undertook, they knew they could come home. They knew their house was going to be there. They knew the law would protect them. But the members of this 29th Colored Volunteer Regiment, their freedom was an uncertain freedom, right? They couldn't depend on the law to protect them when they were home. And here they were going away and leaving their families and their houses and their business behind. They couldn't vote in Connecticut. They couldn't depend on the goodwill of their white neighbors. I mean, they were seeing white folks in New York riot against the war and make black folks the focus of their anger right at that same time. So the sacrifice that they made, I would say, is so much greater than the sacrifice of so many of the historical heroes that we see honored around the city now. And I think that's the great value of recognizing the 29th of the Hartford History Trail. It's for our young people in this city to see that to be from Hartford is to be a fighter. It is to be willing to make a sacrifice even when your own situation isn't so certain. Because you know that other people have even less. And because you know that other people need you. And so I'm excited that we have something a little closer to the street to tell young people who might come by here about who lies here and what they did for this city, for all of us. I feel proud that to have had a small hand, not as big as Councilwoman Hercules or Ms. Prince or some other folks here, to have had a small hand in making sure that there's some other monuments that really tell our young folks who they are, who is their city, what does it mean to be from Hartford. And I'll just add, lastly, that as a person who lives in Hartford and loves Hartford and is not black, this country has asked black people to love it and love its heroes for hundreds of years, even as that country has turned its back on black people, right? Has abused black people, has not given them full freedom still. So I think it should be the goal of the city and of everyone who lives here, whether they're directly connected to that history through their family or not, to be proud of our black history as Hartford history and as a thing to aspire to. So I'm really glad that we're doing a little bit of that now. And I think, like everyone who came before me said, we got to do a lot more of it in the future. And I thank you all for coming out. And I thank everyone here for making it happen. And I'm just glad to have been a little part of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good job,
Next, with the reading of a soldier's poem, we will dispense with the reading of the poem, apparently. Thank you. In that case, let's hear from the incomparable Mr. Lou Brown. Right on time.
I'm a little toddy, T-A-R-D-Y. I just left my church, St. Justin, St. Michael, where we have a 100 men tie day, teaching all the younger brothers how to tie a tie. It's about dignity. I'm on the agenda prepared for me by some wonderful people. Time to sit down at the table of unity. So I had to do my homework. What does it mean? It's easy to say, but how do we show it? We show it by prioritizing our own humanity and prioritizing and recognizing the humanity of others. I'm motivated by the fact that we've lost our moral compass. We've been so politicized that decent people want to erase our history. We must resolve at this point to not let our history be erased. At 81 years of age, I found out I must control my rage. Born and raised here in Hartford, in the Bellevue Square hamlet. And I say all that, Northeast Hartford, with the village of Northeast Hartford, because that's what we were raised in, and generationally. Why is it important to be here today? Why? Patriotism. Patriotism. What kind of a role did African Americans play in the patriotism of this country? The solid majority have got to speak out. I did my homework. I'll explain to you, this is not a uniform, but I have not forgotten where I come from and the history of my people. The sacrifices made under the signature of patriotism. Every war this country has been involved in, starting with the Revolutionary War, a black person has died. Has died. All you've got to do is what I've done. Here on hallowed grounds. I understand what Bridget's talking about. This is hallowed ground. But things have been so politicized that we don't judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of skin. And the politics of the day are scary. You got politics that's trying to say that what happened on January 6th didn't happen. I worked for over 40 years in the media, 26 years at Channel 30 News. The politics is trying to tell us we didn't see that. Hello? Let's wake up. But the key thing here is politics. It's gotten crazy. You got a man who's been diagnosed as having social problems, but all kinds, not just Lou Brown, and he was elected president of the United States. Think about that. Why? Was it because of the money? We knew before he was elected what he was all about, and it's still all about. But I will let no one tell me about my patriotism. It's documented. The 29th Connecticut Colored Infantry Regiment. Members are buried right here. This is hallowed ground. Being for African Americans does not mean you're against anyone else. Please. I believe in the decency of people in this country. The 29th Connecticut Colored Infantry Regiment buried right here in the north end of Hartford. You're not going to erase my history, nor should we who wear the American Legion hats and caps allow the history of patriotism to be politicized. Last week, I have short-term memory, but it was the Tuskegee Airmen. Do you know the story about the Tuskegee Airmen? Do you know that one of the first 5 came from Hartford, Connecticut? Do you know that the first black police officer in the Hartford Police Department was a Tuskegee Airman? We got to do our history. And just to be politically correct, do you know about the 6888? Do you know about the 6 females, African-American females, who kept the morale of our troops up by making sure they got their mail? Hello. The 688, I'm not going to allow the ignorance to erase our humanity and our history and our patriotism. Unity without question. There's a library over there called the Hopkins Branch. I think Chief said something about the history, the library. In 1999, my family and I went to Virginia to keep your history in place. Colonial Williamsburg, you should go down here sometime, brothers and sisters. The devil's busy, but he won't distract me, brother. Don't worry about that. Please, don't worry about it, brother. I'm comfortable, speaking from my heart, speaking to my truth. If you want to find out about the civil rights and the Civil War and the 29th Connecticut Regiment, the Negro in the Civil War, Benjamin Quells, stop by the library and pick it up. And again, what I'm working on now is that trying to control my rage. My rage emanates from the fact that we got a movement in this country to erase my history. And I know the majority of people in this country are decent people. The solid majority had better wake up, because black folks, brown folks, gay folks, whatever, and democracy are in peril. We're in peril. Democracy. Our country, 'tis of thee. The Constitution. We got people, and I covered law enforcement. I don't say they're strangers to me. My brother was a Hartford cop. We got a representative from the Bolden family, 2 and 3 generation in law enforcement. The Buffalo Soldiers. Come on now. That's reality. It's not a figment of our imagination. But we must, each one of us, if we care enough, if we've got moral compasses, to loudly roar and say, no, we're not letting it happen. It's gotten so crazy. I'm not afraid about 45. If he should die, God, I hope it doesn't happen, but if he should die, I don't wish any bad luck on any man. Who's behind him? How was he able to do what he's done? He's a charlatan. Somebody's got to face it and say it. Look him in the eye. We got to have a courageous conversation. He's a sick, degenerate. See, I got to remember I'm on sacred ground. Please, my brothers and sisters, judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. We talk about it every time Martin Luther King's birthday come up. Then we got the nerve of that sick, degenerate thinking, trying to quote Martin Luther King. And when he was, and at my age and in the media, I knew about Martin Luther King. I covered Martin Luther King. Came to Hartford several times. Do a deep dive on Hartford's history, please. But I say to every one of you, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. My nephew, Corey Betts. It's in your DNA, brother.
Nice. Good job.
Let's now hear from Mrs. Philani Woods, A Soldier's Poem.
Jambo, everyone. Jambo. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With liberty and justice for all. With liberty and justice for all. In the year 1954, the place, Caroline Elementary School in Williamston, South Carolina, Anderson County, South Carolina. Each school day, all students in my segregated black school lined up in the front of Caroline Elementary School, sang the national anthem, and said the pledge to the allegiance to the flag. But all we had to do was walk a half a mile down the street and see signs that said white only in the only park in Williamston, South Carolina. Went to the dentist and we saw the door that said white only. But in the part that said white only, there were nice couches and there was lights and there were all kinds of furniture and all kinds of things that we would normally want in an office. But we had to go to the side that had no furniture. It had broken wooden chairs, straight chairs. And then we would go and we would see water fountains that said white only. And then we would go to the doctor's office and the doctor was white, but we still had to go to the side that said white only. I grew up in a place where the movie was even designated. Upstairs was black for white people and downstairs was for, upstairs was for black people and the downstairs was for white people. But still being that, we said the pledge. I still believed at 6 years old that I was included in the American dream. I still believed that I was part of that United States citizenship. But then I went to college and 50 students were shot down by National Guardsmen that were lined up across the street in front of the campus. The students wanted to open the bowling alley to black bowlers. And they had gone down about 3 days earlier and they ran them out of there with fire trucks and dogs. So our president of the college forbade us to go downtown to the bowling alley. Meanwhile, the governor sent the National Guardsmen. They lined up across the front of the campus, and the park was in the front of the campus. And since students couldn't go downtown, they decided to go to the park and have fun at night. Well, it wasn't long before I went to dinner as a cafeteria worker, came back and went to a friend's house, a friend's dorm on the first floor. We were in there talking and having fun and laughing, and all of a sudden we heard a volley of gunshots. It lasted for 2 or 3 minutes. It's like, what's going on? Then we heard screams, and we heard all this commotion, only to find out that 50 students were shot by the National Guardsmen that had lined up in front of our school. Well, Robert Kennedy was over the FBI at that time. And he said, don't worry, we're going to find out what happened. We have an investigation, and we're going to be very proactive on your behalf. Needless to say, the investigation lasted 4 months, and they came back with the solution or the verdict that one of the students has shot off campus. Well, the nearest dorm wasn't close enough to shoot somebody on the street off the campus with a handgun. But they arrested this person and kept him for years in prison, while none of the National Guardsmen were punished. One of the people that got shot was a high schooler that just happened to come through our campus at the time that they were shooting. Needless to say, Rosewood happened, Black Wall Street happened, Martin Luther King addressed us with I Have a Dream speech, which I am so proud to say that I had the pleasure of doing my version of it on an assembly. And that's how my name got known on campus, because I did it at an assembly and they thought it was really good. But guess what? I cheated because I bought a record that Martin Luther King had made with that speech on it. So I practiced his intonations. I practiced when he raised his voice. I sounded a lot like I have a heavy voice, so I can sound a lot like a man. And then I was so engrossed in it that my tensions and my psychological well-being took over. Today I'm going to read to you a poem that I wrote last time this year, entitled New Millennial Revolutionary. Too long not to be free. And for those that don't know me, I have worked for the Hartford Public School 48 years. And I have taught, but now I'm retired. And they can't have me back now, because they let me taste freedom. When you taste freedom, you don't want to go back. Here's the poem. We've been down too long, abused, confused, pushed around too long not to be free. We've been mentally enslaved too long, silently screamed, ranted, raved too long, prematurely buried in graves too long not to be free. Oh, we shut our eyes with fists clenched too long, redlined, profiled, jailed, lynched too long, lived in crime-infested, lead-poisoned, painted, rat and roach-infested slums of stench too long not to be free. We've heard the rhetoric that pseudo-thieving leaders expound too long, spun on America's political merry-go-round too long, dehumanized, victimized, traumatized, compromised, psychologically, emotionally traumatized, compromised, victimized, psychologically, emotionally, socially, economically, medically bound too long not to be free. Lead poison pipes, landfills in toxic pollution, bamboozled, deceived, left with more problems and questions than solutions, branded intellectually inferior too long, hopelessly stripped of dignity, confidence, motivation by the socially superior too long. 80% incarcerated, 3% educated too long. We boycotted, marched, sat in, demonstrated too long. Been misdirected, misinformed, miseducated too long. Saying we should overcome what annihilated too long. not to be free. So in the future, we got to reverse this inequality, injustice, indignity, hypocrisy. Live a self-determined, prosperous, enlightened destiny. Ensure our children know and inherit a proud legacy befitting our long, noble African history. Yes, too long living in denial and apathy. Yes, too long not to be free. So, in the future, we've got to be united, unrelenting, Kwanzaa conscious, clever, create a Shaka Zulu revolutionary African endeavor. No things change when we take a stand to liberate ourselves. Stand to liberate ourselves. Stand to liberate ourselves. Enroll in class, study the past, educate ourselves, and stop being last. We got to pull ourselves up, put ourselves out, turn whimpering negative actions, angry complaints into blood-curdling war shouts. Be brave, strong, smart, loving, persistent, Kwanzaa principled visionaries before conquering and become conquering heroes, new millennial revolutionaries. As Malcolm said, by any means necessary. Yes, brothers and sisters, too long not to be free. Too long not to be free. Everybody say too long. Too long not to be free. Remember, a person who does not know their history, legacy, and self-determining powers are like a tree without branches or roots and are doomed to repeat mistakes and make mistakes and make missteps and not teach our children their true African history. Remember, too long not to be free. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Everybody join me. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Thank you for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, I don't know the words adequate enough to introduce our next speaker. His contributions are so many, he's inspired so many, that when those days come when I don't feel like doing a thing, I think about all the work he's doing and I get up and do something. He really is amazing. If you would please, let's stand and welcome Mike Fothergill.
Oh, thank you. I almost fainted on that one. Thought he was talking about somebody else. Listen, today is the kind of day that, happens to us all. We get up, do what we got to do, we go back to rest. This day is about these soldiers. And my piece is about enshrining them in a way that we have not done in our history here in Hartford. My piece is about the monument. A monument tells who you are, who you've been, and where you're going in life. We all carry our monument around with us every day as we make it. You make your monument every day as to who you are. People know what's on your monument because they know who you are and they know what your deeds are. We have to have clear conscience of your monument building every day. Make sure that you're aware that everything you do and say represents a positive note in your monument every day. These soldiers, over 150 years ago, sacrificed themselves. They wrote their own epitaph because they stepped up to the line, they dedicated. When you step up to a line to stand in front of a firing squad, it takes a lot of those things. The honor to those young men, those middle-aged men, and the older men is kind of, it's hard to put into words to see that back then they had the foresight to know the value of their life was only as strong as the future that came after them. We stand here today and we have not honored them the way we should. We have not. We are not united as a culture, especially here in Hartford. We do not make sure that our history is taught to our kids and our community. We do not make this city respect us as an African-American nation, and it's time to get up off of that. It's time to do exactly what Brother Lou said. Unity. It can only happen one way. We tried uniting this city through politics, and our political brothers, they're only so many. We tried through the churches. They're only so many. We tried through our community leaders. Every culture in this city is led by their culture. They have a structural organization that leads them. For Rambee, the new village is our cultural organization. We're not new, but right now we're recruiting to the point of unity. We have to pull every one of our assets together. We have to pull them together in order to be one powerful piece here in Hartford. Hartford's not a big city. It has a south end and it has a north end. East Hartford left us and West Hartford left us. We sit here. We sit here filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of descendants of people from the 8 projects. They stayed in the city. They did not abandon it when the jobs left. They did not abandon it when the money left. The city has redlined us for over 60 years. That is their bad, and we're going to hold them accountable to that. The thing that we need right now is to honor these soldiers, giving us the opportunity to stand here free, stand here today, knowing that we have growth possibilities and opportunities that we have not taken advantage of. I am not downing our people. I am saying this job's not done. We're just getting started. We're getting started because we're now recognizing that if we have to be led by our history, if we can't tell the farthest and the deepest history that we have to show where we're going, then we're wandering around lost, and we've stopped that. This Juneteenth celebration is an opportunity to take note that they died for our freedom. And we have not honored them yet by being free. We are still working on it. It's a work in progress. Their epitaph is who they are. Every one of us has to write ours every day. We have to write it every day in the things we do. And I'm calling for you, and I've called you for years, to come and unite under this one umbrella of culture so that we can start doing the job of preserving our future history for our kids in this city. It's not a hard job. Everybody's out here working. Every one of us is a tool in our cultural tool bag. Every tool in the bag is different. It does a different job. We need every tool working on our culture, working on our history, working on our future. We need every one of you to step up and become your epitaph. Please, write one that your grandkids and your great-grandkids will be proud of. I'd like to acknowledge the Buffalo Soldiers, Ebony Horsewomen, and so many other organizations that have supported us in our past. But now it's time to direct our future, and I'm calling you all to the table.
and I want to hold you all accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike Fothergill, for everything. According to the agenda, I have the distinct privilege of sharing with you all closing remarks and where do we go from here. I think I have something that's fairly relevant based upon a conversation that I had earlier today, just before coming here with my son. I am a member of Tuscan Lodge number 17, the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge here on Montville Street. I'm the senior warden. And as soon as this concludes, I'm going to another function, a Founders Day scholarship banquet. And I told my son these things, including, of course, this function. And he somewhat jokingly said, how does a person of your advanced years take on so much work? And I took the ribbing in stride. That's what he does to me. But I took it as an opportunity. And these words I truly did share with him. And they are relevant. And they seem to summarize what a lot of the speakers have said today. I talked earlier about my grandparents and how they taught me about history. And believe it or not, up until the year 1967, Hartford history was taught in the Hartford public school system. I literally have the book that was utilized to teach that information. It wasn't in depth, but it was a great introduction. And it fueled my interest in history from that point onward, but I only had an interest in history until one day. I was sent by Walter Doc Hurley, and everyone remembers him, after he told me the importance of persistence, being of service, and getting an education. He sent me to go see a counselor at Greater Hartford Community by the name of Bill Edmonds. And anyone who knows me knows Bill Edmonds was important in my life like Doc Hurley was, and John B. Stewart Jr., Hartford's first black fire chief. As I sat down and talked with Mr. Edmonds and told him what I had been doing or had not been doing, and this was when I was 18 years old and just not enthusiastic about education at all, he slammed his hand on his desk and he said, do you know how many people spent their lives, risked their lives, and sometimes gave their lives so you could have the opportunity to succeed? And what he said after that for the next 2 or 3 minutes, I don't know, because as he said that, I took all those historic lessons and I started to process them. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. Andrew Woods talks about how as a kid he used to see people playing football with, yeah, I lived in Bellevue Square too. We used to come here and I knew about the colored soldiers because of my grandparents. And I knew who he was talking about, who spent their lives, risked their lives, and gave their lives so I could have the opportunity to succeed. And I can tell you honestly, without exaggeration, that from that day onward, and I was 18 and I'm 68 now, from that day forward, I thought to myself every day about those people who made the sacrifices so that I could be successful in life. I think it's important for us to remember some things. Just one more thing, and then I'm going to conclude. I have an uncle, most of you know, William Rab Smith. He's not here today, my Uncle Rab.
Native son.
Indeed, native son. In fact, yes, a veteran. Served in the Second World War aboard the USS Dionysus and served in the South Pacific. When the atom bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he was in Japan. They were getting ready for an invasion. 1 million men would have died if those bombs hadn't been dropped. That's the estimate, possibly more. But my Uncle Rab can, and right now he's up at the Air Museum looking at the airplanes flown by the Tuskegee Airmen with his children. They invited him, so he's not here today. But he could remember walking down Worcester Street when he lived on Worcester Street as a child, and he's lived in Hartford every day of his 97 years, with the exception of time that he was in the service. He walked down Worcester Street, up Pavilion Street, stood at the corner of Main and Pavilion Street and watched the parade as Civil War veterans rode by in their cars. It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago. So much can be said about this, but I won't try. A lot of it has already been said. But I'm reminded of the words of Abraham Lincoln, and then I will conclude. When he said, and I'm borrowing this from the Gettysburg Address, I think it's relevant. He said, "From these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Those words are as important today as they were in 1863 when he spoke them, and they pertain to us. I think where we should go from here is simply this. Let's take it upon ourselves to take all that we have learned. We may be just history buffs instead of historians, but to teach as many of our young people as we possibly can, so that they too can grow up knowing who spent their lives, risked their lives, and sometimes gave their life so we could have the opportunity to succeed. Mike, I want to thank you once again for the opportunity to serve as the Master of Ceremonies. I want to make sure that no one else has anything else to say. We're all set? Okay, let's have Mike Fothergill conclude, please.
You're welcome. Just a couple of things. Going forward, in our future, I'd just like to acknowledge we have 3 representatives running for the mayor in the city of Hartford. And if they can stand up, please. Three, 4. Where's Ronaldo? Ronaldo still here? Well, I just wanted to acknowledge that we are working toward governing and controlling our own future with our young representatives that are running for elective office in our city. So we are at work. We're just moving a little slow, but honor them, vote for them. We need the support from our people to make sure that they exist. And lastly, refreshments at the American Legion.
Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future, making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their cause. You are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now more than ever, you need to make your vote count. It's time to clear the air and vote for a mayor that is unbought, unbossed, trusted, and accountable to you, the constituent. My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, September the 12th, 2023, in the Democratic Party primary election for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience and vote for the name you trust and know. Vote J. Stan McCauley for mayor.
Hartford, another Hartford happening brought to you by W4 News, where we are here for Hartford. Stay tuned for more great programming right here, accesstv.org.